Welcome to the Sensitive Warrior, where feeling everything is your superpower. Hi, I'm Doreen Lang. I am your host, and I am the author of Embracing Venus, Achieve a Life Lit Up for Highly Sensitive People. Here's my book cover for your ease of notice. I'm also a Reiki master and coach. I have a business in Norwell, Massachusetts, Blossom Healing Studio, and that's where I help people identify their high sensitivity. I help them create clarity. I give them tools and strategies to embrace their life so they can have their best life. Today I have a very special guest. I am introducing you to Patrick Kelleher, elder law care attorney. Welcome, Patrick.
Good morning, Doreen, and great to see you today.
Nice to see you.
Yes.
We met about, I don't know how many years ago. We met at Panera, and I was working at a senior living community, and I wanted to bring you in to help me help residents with their law issues.
Yes.
As they age in place.
Yes.
And I remember you so well because your passion for what you do and your commitment to help clients just stuck with me. I just never forgot it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I see you're doing the same work. How long have you been doing this work?
About 20 years or so.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. An attorney for about 22 years and focusing on estate planning for about 20 years, but
Wow.
more specifically elder law for about 15 years.
Great.
After my dad ended up in a nursing home, sadly, years ago.
Yeah, I want to hear about that story.
Yeah.
So just before we jump into that, I want to mention one more thing to the listeners and the watchers, is that you do something really unique. On your website, you have a video, and I clicked on it just yesterday morning, or the morning before, and you literally walk. You're walking and taking people through an office, and I'm thinking to myself watching it, now why is he taking us through the office? What is so amazing? There's tables, there's chairs, right? But you intentionally created this environment to make people feel comfortable, safe, welcomed. It is also very beautiful. You just created such a beautiful space in your office, and that's in Hanover, Mass?
Yes.
That's in Hanover, Mass. What's the address of that?
1415 Hanover Street in Hanover, which is Route 139 in Hanover.
So convenient. And it was just such a beautiful way to kind of say, who is this guy? What does he do? So what made you kind of think about putting that together, let's show them the office? What made you kind of think about that? I thought it was such a great idea.
Right, yeah, great question, Doreen. Yes, just precisely what you said. I was being empathetic in my mind, and I wanted to place myself in the shoes of our clients. Most of our clients are folks 60 and over, probably 70, 75, the average age. Sometimes we get folks late 50s, but more so sometimes we get folks sometimes 75 and older as well, 85, 90, 95-year-old clients. And I wanted the clients and their family members, sometimes their caring children who are the caregivers,
Absolutely.
to number one, know where we are, but most importantly, know what it would be like, what that experience would be like for them when they arrive at our Elder Law Care Center in Hanover.
And work with you, you so they know what they're getting.
Yeah, 100%.
Beautiful.
Yes. I wanted to give them
that.
a visual tour, to meet me at the door, bring them in, walk them through the foyer, and then show them the different conference rooms and show them what we do and how we do it.
Love it, love it. It's really very nice, especially for highly sensitive people who have a lot of anxiety and overwhelm on such an important topic, to know they're going to sit in a space where they can just drop their shoulders and be with somebody who gets them. It's just really brilliant. I just love that. So let's just talk about you for a minute. Can you share your background and why you chose to specialize in elder law?
Yes. I started my journey as an attorney in 2002, and the first several years I jumped right in eagerly and practiced in all different areas of law to get good experience. And as I was doing that, I was realizing like certain areas of law I wasn't as passionate about. I've always had a very keen interest in estate planning, and so I more focused on that. And then as I developed and evolved in my law practice, I started to focus on estate planning. And then as my clients began to age in place, I started to discover like they need additional services in the field of elder law. And then sadly, as I referenced a few moments ago, my dad in the late fourth quarter of his life became incapacitated and ended up taking a bad fall at home one day. My mom was being a brave caregiver, taking care of him at home. and would always check in. My mom and dad came to this great country from Ireland many, many years ago, and they raised 7 boys in the city, in Dorchester. And we were a close family, and I'd always check in on my mom and say, Mom, do you need any help with Dad? Oh, no, your father's doing just fine. But they were being brave. They're putting on that brave face and that,
Sure.
that bravado. And then one day my mom couldn't handle it any longer. She called me down at the office, and she said, your dad's not having a good day today. Can you come on up? I was in the office. I had clients coming in. I said, Mom, I'll be up as soon as possible. And then the next call I got was my dad took a bad fall. And he was rushed off to the hospital to the nursing homes a couple of weeks later. The slippery slope of life I discovered. And then during that tumultuous period, I discovered there's a lot of elder law specific things that I need to know beyond estate planning in the field of elder law, such as Medicare. How long will Medicare cover my dad for his short-term acute care at the hospital for rehab, physical therapy, things of that nature?
Wow, how old were you at the time?
This was in 2010, so this is roughly 14 years ago.
14 years ago, got it.
Yes, and
So you were starting your career, it was ramping up and you were learning and you were thrown into this emotionally, right?
oh, very much so, very much so, and that's a different piece of it. That's a good question, because when you're helping folks who are not family, you're still empathetic and compassionate, but when it's your own family, you feel a lot more internal pressure.
Right.
And people looking to you for the answers. And so that's when I discovered my keener interest in my clients are not only aging in place and need elder law, but look at my own family from a personal standpoint.
Right.
My family's looking to me to give them answers during this crisis period of time when my dad's health was declining rapidly.
That's a lot of pressure on you. I have a sister who's a nurse, and whenever anyone gets sick in the family, who gets the call? Her.
Of course.
She may not know the answer, but she gets the call.
Yes.
So you get the call.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Yeah.
So that was part of the journey.
Sure.
And
it hit you personally, absolutely.
It did, and I was there firsthand with my dad at the nursing home many, many times. Wow. I used to take my mom there to visit him because my mom didn't drive. My dad was the driver their whole 54-year marriage, and I'd go to the nursing home quite frequently with my mom to visit my dad, and I'd see my dad, his spirit declining along with his health, and then seeing the other residents at the nursing home. And observing that and taking all that in, and that all evolved into part of our process, our elder law process today, and how we plan for our clients and their families to enhance, their quality of life. I'd see things at the nursing home where they were spoon feeding folks, and that's a whole another topic, but that's a common medical protocol. They spoon feed folks who are no longer eating under their own volition, in memory care units as well as in nursing homes. And this is when someone can no longer eat under their own volition. So we create this legal instrument, I call it a tool or a power tool called a spoon-fed directive, where our clients can memorialize in writing when they're alive and well, whether they would want to be spoon-fed or not in that setting later in life if they're alive and not so well, like my late dad. Wow. But I'd see other things there when other residents from the nursing home would have visitors, their children, their grandchildren. Maybe it was a special day like their birthday. And I saw a woman once, and she was glowing. We're down in the cafeteria. I was with my children, visiting my dad. And I saw this resident of the nursing home, and she was absolutely glowing, smiling ear to ear. And I'm like, well, look at her. It's her birthday. I'm like, maybe it's her 80th or 90th birthday. I'm not sure. But look at her. She looks so youthful and vibrant. She had her children, her grandchildren there, all singing to her happy birthday. But sadly, when I saw that same person, that same woman, that same resident, each and every time after that, when I was visiting my dad, when she did not have a visitor, she looked like a different person. She was in her wheelchair in the hallway at the nursing home, and she looked completely sad, dejected, and lonely. And I thought, gee, that's very sad. I'm like, what can we do as elder law attorneys to enhance a person's quality of life? So that's one of our tools we use now with our clients and their families. Instructions to my healthcare agents is the title and of that legal instrument, where our clients, when they're alive and well, they can put specific instructions in there how they would like to be cared for. If they're ever in a nursing home setting or a memory care setting, bring me my favorite food, beverage, music, books, programs, people, children, grandchildren, whatever it may be. get me out of here on a nice day to get some fresh air, whatever it might be. That's your personal checklist, dream list to enhance your quality of life. They bring you some joy in a very difficult time.
Wow. It sounds like your personal experience, you did a real deep dive, and then you could relate, and now you can relate to so many people and have a plan. So you really go above and beyond in your planning with people. This isn't just a will or an estate. You go much deeper and wider for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty
That's very,
holistic. It's pretty holistic, and we take that, not just the legal technical parts are very, very important. That's the foundation of a client's trust-centered estate plan. The trust, the will, the durable power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, but also the end-of-life planning tools are so instrumental as well, because we've found from experience, and even my own family personal experience, is when things are memorialized in writing, that's the golden rule. The more information you have memorialized in writing, that's a gift to your family, because you want your family to stay what I call on the front side of the cloud, which represents family harmony, rainbows and unicorns, especially in a difficult time when family are grieving and mourning the loss of their loved one, whether it's their spouse or their matriarch, patriarch of the family. It's really difficult for the human emotion, and it's a unique situation going on. So families grieving and mourning the loss, now it increases the probability of the family becoming agitated maybe with each other. Caregivers are probably not getting adequate sleep, and it's a big, perfect storm for a family to end up potentially on what we call the backside of the cloud, which is family strife, family harm. And we want to avoid that. We want to keep the families on the front side of the cloud.
Wow, that's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. Yes. It really is extraordinary. When we talk about age in place, I ran senior living communities. That was my background for years, right? Memory care units, Village of Proprietors Green in Marshfield. I ran that. Epic in Hingham. I ran that up at Oak Point in Middleborough.
Yes.
That huge community up there. It's senior living 62 plus.
Right.
And people want to age in place. So I just want to share with people in case they don't know. Most people do know what age in place means, but that means you want to stay home. You want to age where you are. You don't want to go and live and move into a nursing home.
Right.
And so it's really important to find ways to do that. And I know firsthand the caregivers are, if they're not family, which gets so burnt out so quickly, get resentful, other families aren't helping. We know all about that, as well as the caregivers that you hire. There's some great companies out there.
Right.
Home Instead, there's some great companies out there. However, they are challenged as well to get great caregivers.
So
right?
true. Yeah.
So to have these things in place, these, like you call them, memorializing their information, it's really, really critical. So you could at least have that basis to work from, like a springboard, right?
Yes.
So let me ask you, highly sensitive people, as I shared with you as we talked, and we talked a bit, so you have a really good head around highly sensitive people and who we all are. But we often struggle with decision fatigue and feeling overwhelmed by planning for others, right? Because we want to do the right thing, and we're very empathetic, but sometimes our care gets in the way. We take on too much, and we have to be realistic about what we can and can't do. So what advice would you have to help caregivers approach this process calmly and confidently? What would suggest they do?
Right, great question, Doreen. I would recommend that they start small, and start small. Probably not a good idea to jump in the deep end from the get-go. Start small with educating themselves as what I call an informed consumer. And we teach our educational elder law workshops in the community for over 15 years. And when I start that workshop, I introduce myself to the good folks that are attending, and I let them know that it is my passion, my purpose, my mission to educate them so they can become what I call an informed consumer. And I would recommend that those folks, highly sensitive folks, also endeavor to become that informed consumer. And how do we become informed or an informed consumer about any particular subject matter that might be different for us or might be perceived as complicated? Well, from my experience, receiving information and education on that. And the beautiful thing in our era, we are living in the information industry or world right now. There's so much information at our fingertips. So I recommend that these folks attend an educational workshop, like an educational elder law workshop. They're free. We teach them. or if they have someone else that they're familiar with who teaches an educational elder law workshop, they should attend that. They should read some books regarding the subject matter, and also watch some videos. We have a rather robust YouTube channel, Elder Law Care, elderlawcare.com, and we have about 300 educational elder law videos on there. All different subject matters, whether it's, how do we plan for disability? How do we plan for, passing and so forth? And so folks can click and just watch and read, become that informed consumer. And then the last piece of that, I recommend that folks, after they receive that information and that education, I often say to folks at our educational workshops and our programs, at the end, I'll say, show of hands, folks, was this helpful for you today? And invariably, the vast majority of hands go up pretty quickly. And I'll say, well, they say knowledge is power, but knowledge is truly not power unless we do what? And folks will say, take action unless we act on it. And that is hitting the nail on the head. After you obtain that information and that education, you need to take action. And because I often say the government does not typically educate or encourage folks to take action to protect from probate court, maybe the estate death tax, maybe protection from long-term care costs like a nursing home. So it's extremely important for folks to set a deadline. So I would recommend for these folks, highly sensitive folks who might be indecisive or it's difficult for them to make a decision, I would recommend get that education and then give yourself a deadline, because they say a goal without a deadline is simply a dream. And so they need to give themselves a deadline and then focus on that deadline to hold themselves accountable to take action, to put that trust-centered plan in place, or a will or power of attorney or healthcare proxy. Give themselves 30 days, 60 days. They're going to meet with their local elder law attorney that they know, like, and trust, and they're going to put that plan in place and put pen to paper and sign it and get it done. Yes.
You probably are also so passionate about this too, I would assume, is because you probably see people that come and say, yeah, I probably should, I know, I need to do that. And then, of course, what happens?
Nice.
The fall, right? The fall is the beginning of the end so often,
gosh,
right? The fall is the
yes.
beginning of the end. So
I've seen some sad cases, Doreen.
No, I
yeah.
bet you have. Let's talk a little bit about the course you teach, because I know you promote that a lot.
Yes.
You do a lot of promotion on that, which is terrific, so people can jump on, come to
Yes.
these sessions. I know you have them also different times of the day, different
Yes.
days of the week, which is great. Is it one long session, or is it 4 and they get a really good idea? Or can you just briefly tell us about the sessions that you offer?
Yes, most certainly. Yes, we teach our educational elder law workshop typically 2 to 4 times per month. We used to teach it 4, now we're teaching it 2 times per month between Rockland and Plymouth. And we teach the evening session, 5 p.m., typically in the Rockland location. And then we teach the afternoon session at 3 p.m., typically in Plymouth.
Now, are these the different offices you have, Patrick, or
Not-
these are training centers?
We teach them typically at, the last several years, we've been teaching them at the Hilton Garden Inn Hotel Conference Room
Oh, sure.
in Plymouth. And then we teach it at the Hilton Ballroom, they call it, in Rockland.
Yep.
So they're the 2 conference rooms we've been teaching the educational workshops for the last 3+ years or so. And we typically get about 25 folks on average at each session. And again, I've been teaching this workshop for about 15 years in the community. And so folks consistently show up to get that free education on elder law. And
I bet they come back again and again, too, because
some
it's
folks
a lot
do.
of information.
It is a
Yeah.
lot of information. It can be drinking like a fire hose, I
Right.
refer to it as.
Right.
And I break down that workshop related to my book. And the title of the workshop is How to Slay the Four-Headed Monster, which is the 4 big things, the metaphorical four-headed monster or the four-headed beast. The 4 big things from my experience folks are looking to avoid like the plague when they enter the 4th quarter of life, which are the following. Probate court. Why do folks typically want to avoid probate court? Because it costs too much, takes too long. Number 2, the Massachusetts estate death tax. Most folks are unaware that Massachusetts is one of 12 states that still has a state-level estate death tax. So we educate folks how to avoid that or how to reduce that tax obligation to the taxing authority. Number 3, the metaphorical third-headed monster is potential financial creditors and predators. Most folks say, hey, Patrick, we work really hard for what we have, but what if our children encounter times of turmoil? What is that? Lawsuits, divorces, in-laws turn into outlaws. how much of their inheritance that we worked our entire lives so hard for would be at risk? And the answer is potentially all of it if you're giving them an outright palm of hands distribution in a simple will or even in a simple trust. And so the clients now are educated on how they can create what we call family bloodline protection, which is asset protection. And lastly, most of the folks 65 and over are gravely concerned about that $18,000 per month private paid nursing home. So like, hey, Patrick, how do we protect a family home from that $18,000 per month nursing home?
Right.
We want to do the three
Everyone's
Ps.
afraid of that. I've worked so hard, and what if we get sick? Oh my God, they're going to take the house?
Yes.
Like they go right to crazy and right to realistic.
Yes, that was my parents. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was my
yeah.
parents' story. Yeah, the house was not protected when my dad's Medicare benefits were running out at the nursing home, and my dad greatly regretted that. He had tears welling up in his eyes, and he
Yeah.
said, "Patrick, what are we going to do about the house?" Yeah, they weren't prepared for it. None of us were at that time. Yeah.
Wow, you were probably wonderfully helpful to them. I can't even imagine how helpful.
Well, fortunately, my mom was about 8 years younger than my dad, and she lived through that awful experience, and she was more open-minded, and she said, once the dust settled after my dad passed in the nursing home, sadly, she says, Patrick, what do we do? How do we protect? Yes.
Wow, and there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, and I saw a whole different feeling with my mom 8 years later when my mom sadly succumbed to a brain tumor. She made a brave, courageous decision to go home on hospice on her terms. She said, I lived a good life, I do not want to linger, because she knew if she went the route of surgical procedure to try to remove that brain tumor, she would have likely ended up in a nursing home like my dad, and she didn't want to go there. She lived through that. But she didn't have the angst and regret like my dad did, sadly. My dad was a great man, but he never thought he'd end up in a nursing home. But all it takes is a bad fall.
That's all it takes.
And that's often the slippery slope that puts people in a nursing home.
Right.
My mom went home peacefully on hospice, and she wasn't worried about, because she knew she protected the house. She knew she beat that 5-year look-back period.
Yeah.
And she did what I call the 3 Ps in my book. She protected the family home, she preserved the value, and number 3, the third P is she was passing it on to the people she loved the most, which was her 7 boys, and she wasn't going to put it at risk to a nursing home.
7 boys is motivation enough to do it as best you can, right?
She was an angel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? One of the things I wanted to ask you about was, do you have to, because you're very kind and you're very empathetic and you care and you get it between your personal situation, and then of course you see people every day helping them and seeing the success, I'm sure. But I'm wondering, do you get involved when families dispute over either caregiving or inheritance while trying to respect each other's values and needs? I mean, inheritance must be, do you get involved with that as well?
We try our best. We're not trained mediators
Right.
or trained licensed clinical social workers, but part of our elder law process, we have what we call a family care meeting, and we try to resolve family conflict to the best of our ability.
Excellent.
And we've had some, pretty, I would say, traumatic cases over the years. And what we discovered and identified, Doreen, is when mom and dad, when the family's experiencing a loss, when they're going through a grieving or mourning process, and it's typically not even when mom and dad passed away, it can be that too, but oftentimes when mom and dad are diagnosed with dementia and mom and dad are aging in place and they have significant diminished capacity and they're declining in health, sometimes the family relations are at odds when they have a disagreement and there's significant conflict in as far as taking care of mom and dad. And sometimes they're battling over who's going to be the caregiver, who's paying for services for certified nursing assistants coming into the house, and they're arguing over little things that are probably shouldn't be argued over. They're losing focus. And from my experience, oftentimes it relates back to what their relationships were like prior to their elderly parent becoming disabled or incapacitated. And now everything's coming to the surface. Whether it's ego or power struggles and things of that nature. I have some information in this on this topic in my books, and I've created some videos on our Elder Law YouTube channel on this as well. It's a whole interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, it's just emotions are just so
Yes.
there and raw.
So my advice to folks are, you're the expert on your family. You know your sons and daughters the best. You know their personalities and their character and their integrity and things of that nature. So it's incumbent upon our clients, when we're designing their trust, I say to them, you're the expert on the family, Bill and Mary. We're the expert on elder law. The deal is we work together to co-create your trust-centered plan
Excellent.
that's going to meet your goals, dreams, and vision. but you need to pick your trusted trustees who you feel is most suitable. Not just someone who has the acumen to do that, but someone who also has good communication skills, who's going to be respectful and kind with the remainder of the family. And they're not going to make relationships worse in that time of incapacity or when the parents pass.
Yeah, you know, you just remind me of something so interesting I totally forgot about. When I was the GM over at Oak Point, and it was 62 plus, there was one gentleman who would come into my office every single Friday afternoon. I mean, he came in for like 3 years in a row. Every Friday afternoon, it was the same problem. He'd come in with his cane, his wife would look at me, and she'd always whisper to me, "I'm sorry." And then the two would sit in my office, and I always came out of behind my big desk, and I would sit with them and say, you know, what is it today? I know what it was, but I'd say, what is it today? And he would tell me that they're just not mowing the lawn right. It just isn't right. It looks terrible. And I would go and look at the lawn. The lawn was fine. Sometimes there'd be a divot or two, but it was fine. But it wasn't about the lawn. He really was hurting. He was really fearing getting older. He had some back issues. He knew I was kind, and he just wanted to be with somebody who was going to listen and say, I'm going to get those landscapers and take care of it. Don't you worry. You're very important to me. He just needed that, like, assurance.
Wow.
So, and I think that's when I didn't realize it until later. That's kind of was my strength, was being very empathetic and having people trust. So when people come to you, you must have clients that have your cell number and are calling you and saying, hey, I need this, I need that, but you really have to put them off, right? Because in a kind way, right? And have your staff and your team really work with them, right? So they can help them navigate without you getting so pulled in, because you still have to keep your strength and your ability to function, right?
Yes.
Do you find that you get very pulled in as well?
It can, for sure. And I've found as we continue to grow our mission, I'm only as good as my team. And I've surrounded myself, I felt completely blessed thoroughly that we have a strong elder law care team at our elder law care center. And in fact, last week, no names of course, I was helping a good friend of mine's elderly parents. And this is a perfect example. My friend called me and he said, Patrick, can you help my mom and dad? They have significant health issues and they're in the late fourth quarter of their lives. They're like mid-80s and they're stuck. And they just can't, and it reminded me of my late parents where they were procrastinating and they're stuck and they're destined for probate court.
It's fear,
and potential
fear.
Fear.
It's fear.
And giving up control like my late dad, like, you know, of the family home and putting home in the trust. So their son said, you know, to his mom and dad, you need to attend Patrick's educational elder law workshop. They did, and they attended. And then they came in and we met and we had a beautiful meeting, and these folks shared with me what their goals and dreams and vision was for their family. In that meeting, the client said to me, they said, Patrick, please thank your paralegal Kim for us. They said, we met her at your elder law workshop. She was so kind to us and so patient with us. And then the mom said, the 2 or 3 times I called your office to schedule the appointment, Kim was so patient with me and so kind to me. Please let her know, thank you. So when she was sharing that information with me, that was music to my ears, because going through this difficult process for them, Kim on our team made it a lot easier for them to move forward and to put a plan in place, a trust center plan in place to protect their loved ones. And that's what they ultimately wanted. And it was scary for them, and they were fearful. But Kim, being kind and patient and listening, like you, Doreen,
a good listener,
was so helpful. And that's not, a lot of people don't have that naturally. So surrounded myself with a good, strong, caring, empathetic elder law care team is paramount. Yes, I'm blessed to have that.
Well, you do extraordinary work, Patrick.
Like, thank you, I appreciate that, but again, I'm only as good as my team, and I feel blessed that we have a strong team that we can work together to help folks that need our help.
You're a strong spoke in the wheel, as they say, so you're just,
Thank
it's
you.
all churning, right?
Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I think you really gave people an idea of your business, how you approach your business, and it's very approachable. I think that's wonderful, so thank you a lot.
It's my pleasure to be here, Doreen, and it's an honor to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This is Patrick Kelleher with Elder Law Care, and if you want to reach him directly, it would be elderlawcare.com.
Yes, Doreen.
Great. And if you're interested in talking more about your sensitivity, whether it's to approaches this significant or anything else that is concerning you and you're having trouble embracing your sensitivity and it's feeling overwhelming to you, please reach out to me at Doreen@blossomhealingstudio.com. And until next time, remember, your sensitivity is your superpower. Thank you.